Hey, it's Shilpa Bharaskar here, and today I want to talk about homeopathic methods and approaches. So, one of the big focus in my practice today is about individualizing the approach, which is using the best approach to suit my patient from across the entire homeopathic spectrum, right? And it's sort of funny because I resisted going beyond the classical Hahnemannian approach for almost 7 years of my homeopathic journey, right from my medical school into my internship and later into the first few years of my practice. And then when I moved away from Mumbai and started working in a rural charitable clinic, I had a huge wake up call. I was faced with some of the most intense situations where I had to make decisions about the remedy in minutes or else get the patient to the nearest hospital, which was miles away, something that the patient I knew would not be able to afford. Unfortunately, that was also the time when, these were the situations when my classical homeopathy failed miserably. I mean, I was struggling at every level, to make the right decisions. There was patchy information, language was a barrier, and there was a lot of pressure on every side, right? And I had, until then, I had a comfortable, successful practice in Mumbai. I had plenty of time. I had, the luxury of having help right at my call, and I had all the time in the world to make those decisions. But here, you know, I was I had come to a point where I had to make a decision to either give up on homeopathy or look for something within homeopathy outside this classical zone, right? And ultimately, I landed upon an approach which I read in Bonninghausen's lesser writings. Ironically, it was a completely unconventional way of prescribing, right? That I had never ever learned in my classical school. In fact, it was an approach that would have shocked them if they knew that was the approach I was using in that particular place, right? And for those 2 years, that so-called non-classical, unconventional Bonninghausen approach became my lifeline. It helped me help more than about 1,000 families, you know, in that particular 2 year span when my favorite approaches were just not working. And since then, I've never looked back. I've moved clinics, I've moved cities, I've moved countries, and I've rebuilt my practice from scratch about in 5 different times. And I've continued to look outside the box and continue to add new approaches in my toolkit every time I've reached a roadblock. And contrary to my homeopathic training and my homeopathic beliefs, I have found, unfortunately or fortunately, that some of the most out of the box approaches have actually helped me dramatically unfold cases that were literally on the borderline of the scope of homeopathy that I learned. So cases I would have hesitated to take on had I remained fixed with one particular type of approach. And the reason I hesitated for years using these approaches was because of my own blocks, or probably because I was influenced by my teachers, by my mentors who strongly advocated this classical approach, prescribing the perfect similimum, wanting me to wait and watch. And to be fair to them, they were probably, not able to question authority themselves, and they were not staying true to their own potential and their own everyday experiences. But whatever it was absolutely not doing any justice. We are not doing any justice to our patients and our homeopathy itself if we try and hold back and limit ourselves to our resources. We limit ourselves to one tool, right? And believe me, it took me years to come over that guilt myself and frankly accept and get to the bottom of every failure and look what was happening beyond that. So only then I could really figure out the strength and the weaknesses of one classical approach. It was only then I could look at another approach that worked the best in that situation. And over time, I could classify what works in what patient, in what type of condition, and why. And that became the, the foundation of the stages template. And I've spoken about this template in different forms in my books. The first book, which is when my favorite approach does not work. You can download that book if you haven't already from on this page. It's free. But that approach today, after 18 years and tens of thousands of cases across 74 countries and hundreds of students who have created their own successes using that template, the success of the template speaks for itself. And it has been personally a growth experience for me at every level. I can tell you, your practice and your homeopathy is much more bigger than one single person's experience and work. And yes, learning new approaches and choosing the right approach for the right patients makes things a bit more complicated, because once you start, you are by default you want to use the best approach that you've learned, right? But this is about moving out of the comfort zone, and it is not about randomly picking anything and everything and throwing prescriptions, because you have to know what's the best tool, and you have to also be able to make sure the tool is healing. It is not just any superficial approach that's going to suppress things, right? So there is a decision making that happens, and you're facing a lot of your own fears, and you need a strategy. You need a formula which can help you pick the right, sort of approaches and apply the right tools, and there's a strategy behind this. But believe me, if you know that formula, it will make your life, it will make your practice much more fulfilling, much more richer. I mean, you will start to expand your success potential. You start to work with a much wider group of patients that you ever encounter, and you can operate at a much bigger scale and scope of homeopathy. And frankly, it's much more fun. I mean, you get to work with incredible tools, and you get to build an amazing impact on the life and well-being of your patients at every walk of life. And along the way, you develop those deeper relationships with them for months and years. I mean, your clients absolutely love you and your homeopathy because your approach is customized to exactly their needs and their wants. That's the beauty of the whole process. And you continue to grow as a practitioner, you keep growing as a person. And so right now, as I'm recording this blog, I'm also, putting together a new training for you. Okay, I'm going to be teaching you the formula and the strategies to choose the best homeopathic approach that suits your patient where they are in their journey. And so you can build a highly successful and a highly fulfilling homeopathic practice. And this formula is based on the stages template, right? But I've never shared these specific strategies before in this sort of, and bringing together all situations together. So they're based on my latest experience, and I'll be opening something for you very, very soon, right? But in any case, the bottom line is you always want to be able to adapt your homeopathy to suit your patient. You want to get to their level and their needs. It's about them. It's about building that long-term partnership with them so you can nurture and foster their health and well-being no matter where they start. And ultimately, you want to be able to create more and more impact with your homeopathy. And you want to give people the best potential no matter what sort of approach you use and what's your favorite one, right? So remember, you can have the best approach in the world, but if it does not suit your patient, it's not going to work for him. That's the fact. If you have an approach that exactly suits your patient, and no matter how unconventional, no matter how basic it is, and no matter how weird it is, if you can use it well and you can use it wisely according to this formula, it's going to create a huge impact on the health. And so don't make the mistake that I did when I started practice. Don't limit yourself, don't limit the potential of homeopathy to what one person said. I mean, what each person said is great, but being able to, if you are stuck with that, then that's the problem. That was literally, where I came from, what my training came from. And if you want to build a great impact through homeopathy across the globe, from every walk of life, then you are going to need many great people, many great approaches, many great practitioners across time, and their heads coming together to give you the platform. You will need the collective wisdom of people who have experienced and documented their results in different types of people, in different countries, in different stages of journeys, and in every corner of the world. This is where the future of homeopathy is. So let's start this year with with this particular thought and idea, and let's go get that. So I'll get back to you with that training very, very soon. Until then, I would love if you can leave your comments below. Give me a thumbs up, give me a thumbs down, whatever, but just give me some reaction. What do you think about this? And let's get that next week.